All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Summer Fundraising. My name is Vanessa Chase Lokshin, and I'm here this week with our guest, Brady Josephson. Hey, Brady.
Hey, Vanessa.
How's it going?
Good, thanks. Yeah.
Did you watch the eclipse this morning?
I didn't. I totally missed it.
No.
I absolutely missed it, but I don't know. I'll watch it on Twitter videos or something.
It was pretty cool. We managed to get some glasses a couple weeks ago, and I was quite surprised at how different it looked using the glasses versus if you're just walking around, you couldn't quite tell anything was that different. Anyways. Well, it's great to have you here. So we're really glad that all of you could tune in today. Brady and I are going to talk about digital fundraising trends that your organization should know about and things that you can use moving into year end. So a couple of quick housekeeping items. I know a lot of you are listening here in Crowdcast. If you're watching us over on Facebook Live, hello and welcome. You're also welcome to join us here over in Crowdcast, where we'll actually be able to see your questions and answer them here. You can come to crowdcast.io/Vanessa E. Chase, and you'll find a listing for this event. We are recording this. If you want to share it with folks afterwards, feel free to do that. We also post archived episodes of Summer Fundraising over on the blog at thestorytellingnonprofit.com. So as I mentioned, this week's guest is Brady. Brady, I think you and I connected, a number of years ago over our general contrarianness about fundraising, right?
Yeah. It was probably 4 or 5 years. I don't know. It's been a while.
I think it's a while ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's a small community, right? So.
Yeah, that's true. So for those of you who don't know Brady, he runs a really fantastic blog called Re-Charity, and the URL for that is recharity.ca, right?
Yep.
Or is it Re-Charity? Yeah, okay. And you also are now consulting. You have your company Shift Charity, and you also run Nonprofit Supply Company, which focuses on helping organizations with Google grants. And I feel like if I'm remembering correctly, you also were a professor for a while, right, at the university on fundraising?
Adjunct. But yeah.
Okay.
I am teaching again this fall on a class, annual fundraising.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. I love teaching. It's so rewarding.
Can be. Can be.
So we're going to dive into our conversation. For those of you who are listening in, we'd of course love to answer your questions here in a couple of minutes. If you'd like to ask us questions as we're chatting, feel free to do so in the chat box. Also, just below this video's screen, you'll see a button that says Ask a Question, and you can type in questions there as well. Either place is fine, and we'll definitely do our best to get to all of those. So, Brady, I know we're talking about digital fundraising trends, and I wanted to ask you just to start off with, what do you think are some of the more exciting trends that you're seeing these days in the nonprofit space?
Yeah, it was funny that this whole thing's called trends, and I'm thinking that the trend for me is actually not very trendy. I think the temptation is thinking about trends like new channel or new tool or new something. And for me, the focus or the trend is actually going back to maybe just good old fundraising, but done in the digital space with a huge emphasis on, I'm calling it optimization, but basically testing. I think that that's maybe a bit of a trend as a renewed focus on testing. And the parallels between digital and direct mail are very common. They're very similar. And so I think direct mail, we started pumping out mail, and then smarter and smarter people came along, and we started getting more smart and said, hey, why don't we just start testing this? We don't know what is actually working. And I think it's maybe the similar in digital, where at first the digital, let's throw up websites, let's send emails, let's do this stuff. And now it's kind of reached the point where well, how do we know if any of this stuff is working? And now I think more and more emphasis is well, let's test this thing and let's track. It's a huge benefit of digital that a lot of nonprofits don't tap into at all. So the big trend for me personally is focus on testing and optimization. And then that can lead to other insights and new ways to do things. But really testing and optimization.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think for me, the question always is, what is actually working? Because sometimes when you're doing so much in a fundraising program, it's difficult to know exactly where to pinpoint that success, because once you can pinpoint that, it's really easy to leverage that and start to put more resources and energy into what's actually getting you, 80% of the results in a fundraising program.
Yeah.
Whereas you're spreading lots of resources very thinly over a lot of things. Being able to actually optimize that, is such a better way to go.
Yeah, well, and the biggest thing then is like the donation page or the donation page experience. So maybe that's another trend, but that comes out of optimization because there's three things that you can do. You can get more people to a page. You can do a better job of kind of communicating value on a page or inspiring people to make a gift, or then you can make it easier for them to just complete a transaction. And so driving traffic is kind of its own strategy, and it's somewhat limited to a lot of charities, but every single organization can optimize the value proposition or what they're offering to donors, and then the experience that they then go through to complete a transaction. And what really kind of like had this aha moment personally is, you know, making an incremental change here and there. If you start getting, you know, 5 people through your donation page as opposed to 3, like stack that up day over day, month over month, and that leads to really significant results in a 12-month period. And that's where we kind of stopped looking at like, you know, what are all these new campaigns and saying we're losing, you the client, like losing donors and revenue every single day from people who click donate, show an interest, and then peace out. And so for us, like, why are we spending all this time trying to acquire and reach and whatever when there's people like knocking on the door? Like, let's make it easier for them to come in, you know? And so that's where we're starting to spend more and more of our time.
I think that's such a great point, because I think for a lot of organizations, you're right, they have been focusing on reach and sort of audience building, especially with digital tools these days. And now it's like a lot of them do have that audience. They have, you know, a good amount of website traffic, and it's just a matter of capturing and kind of funneling that towards a more specific goal, like donating, for instance.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, just it's not that complicated, really. Pointing people to a more specific page with a more specific ask and making it easy for them. Like, it's not that hard, but it's really important.
What are some examples of landing pages that you've seen that you think are particularly good, or maybe, you know, good examples of some of these things you've mentioned?
Yeah, so it's tough because it's hard to separate the principles from the actual execution, right? So you can go to a page like Charity Water, which people always use, or here in Vancouver, a really good example is UGM, Union Gotham Initial, which you're familiar. And like, they're really good examples of donation pages. And you might walk away from that saying, oh, we need to use more visuals, or we need to do kind of suggested asks. And those might be useful things. But the core principles I've seen best broken down, a kind of friend partnership organization called Next After in the US has done a lot of research on landing pages and tests. They've identified 7 principles of a good donation page and 13 characteristics of a good email capture page. And so you can apply those principles like social proof. Donors, whether it's 3,000 other people have given today or this year, or whether you use a seal from Canada or GuideStar in the States or something like that. There's little things that you can do on your page. They want to know their donation's secure, so use a lockbox or the text 100% secure. So as long as you achieve that objective, it doesn't matter necessarily if it's top right or bottom left, or that's very incremental. So UGM is a great example that we use. One that Next After has, which is kind of contrary. They work with Hillsdale College out of the States. And one of the tests that they've run a lot, and we've ran it a few times, but more copy and more text and fewer visuals often leads to better conversion. So,
interesting.
Yeah, a big temptation is let's throw a video on there. Let's do a big image. And that's great higher up in the funnel to communicate story and to communicate visually and create empathy. But actually, when it comes time to transaction, things like images can be somewhat distracting, and particularly videos can be very distracting. Someone will click play, watch a video, lose focus, or feel good and leave on. And more copy than less, because the other assumption is that people know that they want to donate. And that might be true for you or your staff or maybe me. But the vast majority of people are kind of interested in giving, but not 100% committed. And so if you just click donate and go to a page, it's like donate now, your suggested donation amounts. By the time you hit that page, you would have had to have been 100% certain that you want to make a donation today. And if not, there's really nothing else that helps you say, yeah, this does seem like a good idea, or I do want to donate. And so more copy helps kind of confirm, hey, what you're about to do is a great thing. Here's how you'll know. is really important on the donation page. And so I like to use the Hillsdale College example because it's boring. It's not great design, but when you break it down in terms of what it's doing, it's a really good converting donation page that any organization, in theory, again, should be able to do.
Yeah, that's a really great suggestion. I feel like I see something similar happen quite frequently in fundraising emails where there's a lot of pressure to get to a first ask before you get to a scroll line, right? And I think what often happens there is that organizations rush right into the ask, and you're not giving people quite enough information to say, yes, this is what I'm ready to do, or ready to take that call to action. And without that sort of context or compelling rationale as to why they should click this particular link and make a donation, you're kind of rushing that whole process. And I feel like the rest of the email sometimes suffers because you haven't quite built that case up well enough before you get to that first ask.
For sure. And if you were to take that approach of saying, let's have a shorter email with the ask earlier up front, then it puts even more pressure on the landing page to help complete the story. Because if it's short email to short landing page, now there's no way for them to get more context. So at least if you go short email to longer landing page, they can still kind of have that. Because the principle is someone's motivation needs to be greater than the cost or the friction that they have to overcome to complete a donation. And so it's very easy to get people on a frictionless path of short email, click short landing page. But if you haven't created any sense of motivation, when it comes time to fill in the credit card information and complete that, sorry about that, then they're not going to go through the process. They're not going to want to complete the donation, right? So creating motivation, and it often comes in longer form and more copy, is really, really important.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. And for those of you who use Google Analytics, one of the things I would really encourage you to do, especially if you're curious about the conversion rate on a landing page or your donation page, and you're making changes, is track that over time and think about, on a monthly basis, how many visits are you getting to that donation page? How many gifts are you actually getting? And so you can actually start to track some of those real analytics and see, how many people are you losing as a result of the landing page, and then you can be able to start to make some of those changes that Brady has mentioned.
And one note on that too, Google has a new program called Optimize, or Google Optimize, and it makes it very, very easy for non-technical people like me to run A/B tests on donation pages. So you could add Google Optimize and then create a donation page that has longer copy and test that against the donation page that has less copy. And you can see it right in Google Analytics, the conversion rates, how many people have visited, and it'll even kind of tell you percentage of likelihood of it, being statistically significant, stuff like that.
Awesome. Any other things you're seeing, Brady, that you want to mention in terms of trends or things that you're seeing people focus more on these days?
Maybe two. One is monthly giving, which we won't talk a lot about, but I'm seeing more and more people kind of interested in monthly giving, which is good. I'm the hugest fan around of monthly giving. I think it's amazing. It's super, super important. So we can talk about more if people are interested. But the other one that's more kind of digital focused is maybe Facebook advertising. We do a lot. Almost that's the only type of paid advertising that we do now. We've seen it to be more effective than other forms of advertising. And we've seen some really good results, both on donor acquisition and using ads, not just boosted posts, but legitimate Facebook ads in conjunction with a campaign to further integrate it and really helping, boost results. So I think that's a good trend that we use. And, as we head into the fall and year end, I kind of suggest it to everyone to try and experiment with Facebook ads and see if it can help boost your campaign overall.
Yeah, definitely. That's been one that's been super interesting to me. I had a client recently who ran a retargeting ad. So they installed a pixel on their website, which tracks people who come to your website against Facebook profiles that they may have. And what they ended up doing was that anytime someone landed on a donation page, they retargeted them with some content and some other types of information to then kind of hopefully get them back onto that donation page. And they saw some pretty great conversion rates from that. I thought that was a really interesting way to do it. I think, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, but I think the pitfalls I often see with some of my clients in Facebook ad campaigns is that they kind of misstep on the targeting, and so there ends up being either too broad of an audience or they're testing too many variables at once, and so they don't always know what audience is actually working the best. But I found with some of the campaigns I've worked on that the retargeting ads seem to be the best so far. versus sort of the more cold traffic ones. But that makes sense. So.
Yeah, it's kind of, we're starting to split audiences into two groups. One is like acquisition or new, and they may not all be entirely new, but it's people that like maybe don't know us very well. And then more like current, and that would be, donation page visitors. We'll upload email lists and target people that are already on your email list. And it maybe seems like, well, we have their email. Why do we need to target them on Facebook? But probably 50% of people aren't even opening your emails at best, anyways, let alone those that click. And then even those that do open it or click, maybe they distracted or their dog barks and they forget about it. There's reasons. And so advertising to the same people on Facebook is really good. It allows them to see it. It's another opportunity. So, and those produce a ton of results. Well, not a ton of results, but like good results in the short term. Whereas the other one, it's a different strategy. You're talking to people who don't know you, who barely know you.
Right.
So your copy, your creative, like it is pretty different. So I think even just making that differentiation of people who know us versus people who barely know us or not at all. And then it changes your expectations. Like in this bucket, we're willing to pay a lot more to get a donation, and we have to pay a lot more to get a donation. Whereas in this bucket, we should pay a lot less because they're much closer to making a donation already.
That's a really great point, and a really great and important distinction, I think, for sure. And definitely kind of is parallel with the logic I think a lot of organizations would consider when they think about acquisition costs anyways, right?
Yeah, exactly. Again, applying same concepts just to new mediums and channels.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you and I have talked about a couple different, opportunities around fundraising and ways that organizations can, continue to increase their donations, increase their visibility through the end of the year. What do you think are some common mistakes that organizations may make when they're, excited to jump on one of these bandwagons?
Just bandwagons in general or year end?
Let's say general.
Yeah. I'm of two minds, and it's really tough. So we do a lot of like audit and analysis, and almost every time what comes back is organizations generally don't communicate enough, just don't send enough email communication in particular, don't retain donors enough. A lot of people have talked about donor retention stats. We won't need to go into it. And then don't provide enough like clear information or value proposition or offer or whatever it is. Almost every time this is what comes back from audits. And so part of me is saying, on these trends, you shouldn't even really think about these next trends until you have a clear value proposition and offer. You're sending enough communication so people even know what that offer is, and you're focused on keeping more donors around. Like until you can kind of do those three things or some of these fundamentals, then trying to figure out how Instagram can better benefit your organization, or a Snapchat campaign, or these crowdfunding. And it's not to say there isn't value there, but the best use of your time is on these like core things. And it's like a boat. You're leaking until you plug the leaks. You can't sail very fast. I don't know if that's a great analogy, but
I think it is.
So I like to think about what's next. It's just often back and like, man, there's a lot of stuff that we need to kind of shore up, which will best help the organization. Because even if you try a new trend or an experimental kind of thing and it works, if you still have the leaky bucket and you don't have the infrastructure around, then people will leave, and then all of this new trend chasing stuff was kind of all for naught. So the biggest thing is you have to have a foundation before you can really get the most out of any experimentation that's kind of, trendy or radical.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And I think I say the same too, oftentimes with our clients, which is that, people are really in a growth phase. They're ready to try something new, and they haven't quite got the fundamentals or that foundation, as you said, in place. And I think especially when we see those common with our organizations is usually around donor retention. And it's like, if you're not really solving the issue of retaining donors, then pouring money into acquisition and new strategies is not really going to be the ROI you're looking for in the long term, because you're hemorrhaging donors and you're not really building up that larger donor base and benefiting from the money that you're putting into acquisition.
Yeah, no, for sure. It happens all the time. And it's a bad strategy on the agency side, because people will pay for acquisition, and even though they're ready to, hire us or other people for acquisition, keep them in and say, really shouldn't. It's not a great business model, but it makes the most sense for organizations.
Yeah, I hear you on that. So switching gears a little, so year-end fundraising is coming up. What are some of your recommendations for folks who are listening in today who might want to integrate some of these trends or start to think about how they can get ready to use some of them in maybe year-end campaigns or even in months next year?
Yeah. I mean, we've already talked about Facebook ads. I would suggest people try Facebook ads. So, and I think a couple things if you're going to try it, like one, you probably need a $600 budget at minimum. You know, we've said to people like, oh, we've tried $50 or $100, and it's fine to do that, but then you should make zero assumptions whether it works or not. There's just no way you can accumulate near enough data or information. Even $600 is a bit kind of absurd. It's so low, but that's what we've seen to be like kind of the bare minimum if you want to actually do it quasi well. But I think experimenting with Facebook ads, and even if you just do retargeting in an email list tied to your year-end campaign in December or something like that, it should produce a little lift and a really good use of $600, and it's a pretty simple strategy, something like that. Another thing that we'll often do is, I mean, in addition to sending more emails throughout the whole year, but particularly in the last week, I think it's becoming more and more kind of known, like, oh, we should send more emails, but last week in particular, the last 3 days, it's really important. And I know everyone else is sending emails in those days, but you can and you should be as well. If you're worried about annoying people, you can try to do, use MailChimp's great at this. You can say send to people who didn't click the last email. So if someone opened and clicked your email on the 28th, they won't get the one on the 29th, the 30th, the 31st. Basically, every email that you send leads to more revenue in those last 3-4 days. So you really should. And the nice thing is it's like the one time of year where asking someone to give is somewhat doing them like a favor. I mean, the act of giving is good. And so you're always doing donors a favor, but if they have tax implications or want a donation or something like that, or receipt, then they have to do it. So that's a big kind of component as well.
That's a great point. One of the things that we've done with clients in the last 3 years or so that we've been running more digital campaigns around year end has been kicking emails. So when we run campaigns in December, we'll look at the best performing emails. And especially if we see ones that's done really well, and maybe in the email calendar, we have some extra space, a couple of days buffer or whatever between the emails that are being sent. One of the things we'll do if something we did really well and outperformed other ones that we've sent so far is we'll actually kick it back out again. So we'll send the exact same email, but we'll only resend it to people who either opened and did not click or did not open. So basically anyone who opened and clicked is not going to get that email again. Right. And we've almost always seen a lift in giving again, even though it's the exact same email, and people might assume oh, you're going to get tons of unsubscribes. That has never happened. And it's because, like you said, not everyone's seen those emails. Somebody may have opened it. Maybe they had the intention of giving it, dropped to the bottom of their inbox. Things get shuffled around, whatever. There's lots of reasons why people may have never seen that to begin with. And so if you do find that something is perform particularly well in your email calendar around your end, resending that and recycling it is such an easy win and something that will definitely
that's a great point. That's a great idea. Yeah, something easy to do.
Awesome. Well, these tips have been really great. I'm really excited to answer questions from folks who are tuning in. And if you do have a question for us, feel free to send it in using the chat box, or you can use the Ask a Questions box. I'm just going to check and see if anyone has sent anything in. All right. So far, it doesn't look like we have any questions, Brady. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to share while we're waiting in case folks are typing in questions.
Maybe the only other thing when it comes to year-end campaigns is kind of having a specific offer. Again, I talked a little bit about an offer, but give today isn't an offer, and give today because it's the end of the year is also not an offer. It's closer to an offer in that there's urgency of why someone should give now because it's the end of the year. But probably the number one thing missing from donation pages any time of year, but particularly when it comes to year end, is any sense of offer or trying to answer the question, why should someone give to you as opposed to another organization or not at all? Your donation page should be able to answer that question at a very simple level. And if it can't, then it's something that everyone should be able to do and needs to do, particularly year end when everyone's asking for money, right? Your offer, your value proposition is most important to say why you're worthy of the donation compared to another organization.
For sure. That's such an important thing. Emily had just asked, she said she missed the part about when you were talking about donors' motivations. I think that was a little earlier on. Do you remember what you said about that?
Well, in the like kind of conversion equation of why someone would take an action,
I think so.
Their motivation to take that action, in this case, make a donation, needs to be greater than the cost force or the friction that they have to put up with in order to do it. So there's a cost to making a donation in terms of there's a financial cost, but there's a mental cost as you go throughout the process of trying to input your information, and it's kind of frustrating to put in your credit card all the time. Like these are like cost factors. If you don't know the organization is trustworthy, then you're thinking, you know, is this trustworthy? What should I do? If the page is confusing, there's even mental, you know, friction. We're trying to figure out where to go next. So these are all like costs factors or on the negative side of the ledger. And so basically the more motivation you can inspire in someone through storytelling and offer, great email leading into the donation page, the more friction or they're more willing to spend on the cost side. So the point was, if we send people into making a donation with low motivation, the first sign of friction is going to outweigh their motivation and they're gone. You know, the best performing donation pages convert at 15%, right? 15%, which means 85% of people who click donate do not end up making a donation in the best case scenario. Like that is terrible. Like that should be frightening to us. So, you know, think about a poor page and how many people are leaving, you know, 95%, like tons of people are leaving donation pages. And part of it is because we aren't sending them there with enough motivation. And then we're not doing enough on the page to reaffirm that as well as get them to. So that's what I was talking about.
Okay, great. Thanks for repeating that.
Yeah.
Kristen has a question. She asks, what are some Facebook ads that you've seen that are compelling, and do you know their success rates?
Yeah, good question. So there's all different types of Facebook ads that you can do, right? There's video ads, there's carousel ads. Again, what we've kind of defaulted to is one image with no text on it, more copy in the kind of message section, so it's a little bit longer of a post. And then we use Donate Now, because that's what we're asking people to do, is donate now. You try to use a friendly link, so like / campaign name, and then we reaffirm the kind of offer. $50 will help a person in need today in the description. That's kind of, you know, our like winning Facebook ad recipe, and we only show it to desktop users and only in their newsfeed. And that's because while mobile giving is growing and more people are doing donations on their mobile phone, it's not nearly as handy to make a donation, you know, on the bus when you click this ad, as opposed to at your computer when you receive or when you're on Facebook. So it's wasted money for the most part. And then we've just seen the news feed be much more productive in terms of conversion, as opposed to like those right-hand ads. So the big thing with Facebook ads as well is we try to not pay for impressions, because then we're not trying to build brand, we're trying to actually secure donations. So you can optimize for conversions, which is actual donations, or at best link clicks. So you only pay when someone actually clicks the link to take you to your donation page. Sorry, my dog's barking again. So that's what it is. In terms of success rate, that's going to be really, really difficult for me to come up with a number between the, you know, there's the two groups. There's the acquisition number and the retention number. But a loose kind of back of the napkin math, if you know your lifetime value of its donor segment or your donor database, you should be willing or can spend 10 to 20% of that on advertising to acquire them. That's totally acceptable, good amount to spend, and kind of helps you wrap your mind around what it costs to actually secure that donation.
Yeah, I think that's such an important number. When we've run campaigns with clients, that's been a number we've always looked at, is kind of the lifetime value, because that's the potential, right? When you've like invested in this, you know, and you're to increase donations or acquire new donors, you know, so long as you can justify that number based on what you're spending, then, you know, it's definitely a better ratio to look at for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. And maybe we'll go to just this last question here from Marty. Marty asked, would you talk a little bit more about monthly giving programs, which I know you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, well, and you talked about lifetime value, and that's the big reason for monthly giving.
Yes, for sure.
Lifetime value is the number one metric when it comes to fundraising. And generally, we, nonprofit, our industry, do a terrible job of actually acknowledging that and measuring that. If we did, our donor retention rates would be very, very different. So anyways, lifetime value is the most important thing. And then the biggest driver of increasing lifetime value is keeping people around for a longer period of time. So retention is hugely important. And then the reason why monthly giving is so great is the donor retention rate of monthly donors is immense. It's often 75, 80% compared to non-monthly donors, which is somewhere between 30 and 40. So the lifetime value of monthly donors is so much greater than one-time donors. Like, it's not even close. Monthly donors give more in a year, let alone their lifetime, than one-time donors. So if you're trying to build a sustainable organization, which we all should be trying to do, building up the number of people who are on monthly giving plans is so imperative. And what's nice now is you've got millennials and younger donors who are used to subscription-based purchasing that are very interested in monthly giving, right? It's a way for them to give $9 a month and feel like they're making an impact. But then you've got old generations, whether they come from a faith-based belief or not, in terms of tithing or places of worship, where it's common to build in your reoccurring giving and sponsor child. Like, basically monthly giving is appealing to like any segment for the most part. So it's a hugely valuable tool. It appeals to almost all segments. It's super important for organizations. It's just really, really, really important.
That's great. And I know from when I managed monthly giving program years ago, it was such a valuable investment for us every year. And, I think every organization is different in terms of the acquisition techniques that'll work best for you. When we've worked with digital first organizations, they'll often have really good success with email conversion campaigns for monthly giving. Whereas when I worked with organizations that were primarily direct mail based, when we tried email campaigns for monthly giving conversion and acquisition, they tanked. And we always found the best thing for those type of organizations has been the telephone, which is definitely an investment. And sometimes, depending on the donor file that you send to the telemarketing agency, it may take you 6 to 12 months to recoup that cost. But as Brady said, you're looking at such a high acquisition or such a high retention rate for monthly givers that the ROI on that, you'll see that pretty quickly. And ultimately that'll pay off for your organization in the long run.
Yeah. A 12-month break even would actually be really, really good. I think a lot of salespeople will tell you, 6 to 12 months. That's pretty aggressive. In reality, if you can, invest in monthly giving or a long-term acquisition plan and, break even 12 to 18 months, that's pretty good. And just on the phone, like, we suggest using the phone. It's great. Email can work. The thing is, the more that you use mass techniques like email or mail, you just need more leads and prospects. So if you're only going to deal with a pool of 100 people, using email is going to be really difficult to convert more than, a couple. Yeah. Whereas phone, if you only have 100 people, is much better. But now if you're dealing with the thousands, hey, sending a bunch of emails could actually work. So there's probably a tipping point where phone is good up till this point, and then from this point on, it's probably better to use more mass techniques. I don't know exactly what that breaking point is, but if you're smaller, or a starting point for sure is phone.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, Brady, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing just so much information with us about digital fundraising and things organizations can start to experiment with. What's a good place for people to get in touch with you if they have questions or want to follow up after today's episode?
Yeah, you mentioned the blog. That's a great place, recharity.ca. That would be the best place to get like regular content. And then Shift Agency is our digital agency. So shiftagency.co is the new domain there. And then Google AdWords, which we didn't talk about, but we get and manage those grants from Google. They give $10,000 a month in free search advertising. So we do that for about 15 to 20 different clients at nonprofitsupply.co. Is that one.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And if folks are looking to connect with myself or the Storytelling Nonprofit community, one of the best ways to do that is over in our Facebook group at the Storytelling Nonprofit Lounge over on Facebook. Just below this video, you'll see a green button that you can click on that'll take you right there if you're interested in hanging out with us over on Facebook. Thanks everyone so much for tuning in. I hope this is super helpful for you and have a great rest of the week. Bye everyone.